Okay, so I'm like really surprised this is where I am so soon into the year, honestly. I genuinely was just going to check Billy Talent out just to see if there was even like an atom of the band that I grew up with that I enjoyed a lot. Their last two records weren't very good. This being their sixth, Crisis of Faith feels like a really interesting, creative, like resurgence. And I'm really talking about this and putting this as a review because of the really weird dichotomy of revival that pop punk is going through right now. With My Chemical Romance seemingly coming back in full swing, eventually having stalled because of COVID, and also Travis Barker refusing to let it die, working with literally anyone who's laying him into the fucking door. It just seems interesting to take a band like this who's been around for 30 years, and the bands that I'm going to compare them to in a minute, that they seem the most stable all of a sudden. I would consider Pop Punk Ontario, Canada rock band Billy Talent as your punk band's favorite punk band, maybe. Sorta, kinda. They never really like blew up in far as regards of, Fall Out Boy or whoever else you want to compare them to. They were actually there the whole time. They've been around since 1993, but they didn't really get their big break till '03. But something weird's going on here. Their first two records were really, really good. Their third record was starting to wane. It seemed like they didn't know what they were doing writing wise. And then me personally and a lot of fans kind of all but gave up on how like uninspiring and uninteresting that their last two records, Dead Silence and Afraid of Heights, were. Afraid of Heights was abysmal. I can't remember a lot about it. It was 6 years ago now, but I remember just feeling like, all right, these guys are dead. They're watered down. There's nothing to them. I held out hope for like Rise Against and hoped that they'd come back because I still felt a glimpse of the way they sounded back then in some of their, lesser records during the 2010s. But Afraid of Heights was not Billy Talent, really, or just a very bad carbon copy. It was to the level of like Revolution Radio, I guess, was for Green Day. And those two bands are very important to compare this because I think as far as resurgence or at their peak goes between both Rise Against and Green Day are very comparable here to this album specifically. Opening up with Forgiveness 1 and 2 is super interesting because it's like the closest to like almost prog rock in that very base form of just being more intricate and laying out a more creative pattern of instrumentation has really taken off, and its storytelling, and it reminds me a lot of the American Idiot album. In fact, this whole record, I think, as a whole, saying this a little too early and I was hoping, but like, I think this is a better record than American Idiot, like pound for pound. Maybe not song for song, but something about this whole listening experience and just the way it goes in their storytelling. I find a lot of these songs more compelling or more interesting, and I never was super into American Idiot besides the three or four really big radio hits. But Forgiveness 1 and 2 sets a weird precedent that I just was like, wow, I wonder if they can keep this up for the whole record, and they kind of do. Reckless Paradise is probably the biggest return to form for the band. They sound really good. They sound smooth yet aggressive like they did on Billy Talent's 2 and 3. Nothing's going to touch the way they were in their first record. That is a hallmark of aggressive, blistering pop punk hooks and semi shrieky melodies and speed, and it's untouchable. But here they have very mature and complex nuance that I am reminded of what Arctic Monkeys did when they came out with AM. And this whole record kind of has that feeling. It is a mix to me of American Idiot and AM and very mature sensibilities without losing any of its pop punk snark or personality of feeling like they're the smoothest dipshits on the block. Just really loved the crunchy ending of Reckless Paradise. That reminded me of old Billy Talent, and I was really shocked that that even could exist anymore. I Beg to Differ, I think, is exactly what Rise Against is kind of failing at right now, with very uplifting This Too Shall Pass kind of anthems that they've done in their last like three records. I don't know where Rise Against is right now. They're grasping at straws to sound like they used to. They have glimpses of greatness in their last two records, but I think as far as just comparing it to Nowhere Generation that came out last year, this record far surpasses that in enjoyability and creativity. There's some meh on here, like Wolf is also one of those just really somber, dealing with eternal struggle-ness. Reactor sounds exactly what like all the leftover tracks on American Idiot are like. It starts to give off these Jesus of Suburbia and Extraordinary Girl vibe. And honestly, it depends on how you feel about pop punk. If it's allowed to be scathing and scolding and political and aggressive, then you'll like Judge. But if you think pop punk should only be about emotions and relationships and feelings or whatever, then you'll hate Judge, because Judge is their attempt, I think, of what Sub 41 did recently with Order and Decline. Their current achievement might be hanging out with all the wrong people, though, because it's jaunty, it's dancey, it's sarcastic, while still just kind of in that very aloof pop punk way, just talking about, choices that they've probably made over the last 30 years in, very over the top pop punk fashion. One Less Problem has some really good like vocal layerings, and I really like it. And again, it's just, I can't help but feel the same way that I think American Idiot was trying to make me feel, but was too kind of in its face, or just I know what I'm talking about, so listen to me kind of quality that most of those songs end up having after the third or fourth time you've heard the record. And I don't get that sense of I know better than you from this one. Pop punk's in a weird place right now, where it's wanting to come back as a genre and a sound with this new generation being led by the old generation. But the old generation is trying to tell people that they still have something to say. It's just not very convincing. I don't think Green Day will ever make another like really good record. And this album feels like what 21st Century Breakdown should have been if it didn't take itself too seriously, or felt like it had to be this big, important, over-encompassing drama and stuff like that. I've listened to this record 3 full, like, non-stop times in a row at this point, like no skips, just to like really get the emotion. There's only like 3 or 4 songs that I'm not super into. Wolf, End of Me, and For You are little like that dramatic side, too overly personal that pop punk's known for. But the rest is just a level of atmospheric, mature pop punk snark that I didn't think they were capable of anymore. It really put me in the middle of like Billy Talent 2 and Billy Talent 3. So I want to give this not a very high score, but give it a 6.75, because I still understand that this is just like a pop punk band holding on for dear life at the edge, but like they're starting to look like they're coming back from the edge, and that's pretty amazing. This is leaps and bounds above their last 2 records. It's probably better than Billy Talent 3. I thought Billy Talent 3 only had like maybe 4 really good songs. And this is really good. 6.75, I think, to show that like this is actually a pop punk album worth people's time if you enjoyed pop punk at all at any point in your life and want something that's not gonna, just remind you of Travis Barker repeating Glory Days, or you don't want to get trapped into those angsty teen dramedy situations and sensibilities in your head again. None of that is in this. I think this is Billy Talent's AM. I think this is their mature, sophisticated comeback. And yeah, I just want to kind of get the word out on it, because I'm just like, holy shit, Billy Talent's likable for a hot second for the first time in like 10 years. That's bonkers. That's it for this one. Tell me what you think if you end up listening to it. Always like, share, subscribe if you're up for it. And as always, have a good night. Thank you for listening.